The young lynx, just 2 years old, limped slowly through the thick bushes of Cedar Ridge Forest. Every step was painful. Her golden fur, once shiny and marked with black spots, was now dirty and tangled with dry blood, leaves, and tiny sticks. A few days ago, she had stepped into a metal trap hidden under some moss. The sharp teeth of the trap had clamped down on her back leg, and she had cried out in pain. She struggled for hours before finally pulling free, but the wound was deep, and walking became a daily struggle. She had not eaten in over 2 days. The pain in her leg made it nearly impossible to hunt rabbits or birds. She could no longer sneak through the forest like before. Her movements were slow, loud, and clumsy. The other animals sensed her weakness and stayed away. Her ribs were starting to show, and her body felt weaker with every hour. Driven by thirst and desperation, she followed the sound of running water. It was faint at first, but as she pushed forward, it grew louder. The sound gave her hope. She needed a drink, and maybe she could clean her leg. The noise led her to Whispering Creek, a small stream that ran through the heart of the valley. The creek was quiet and hidden, surrounded by trees and mossy rocks. Normally, it was a safe place, but today, the rain from the night before had turned the ground into a trap. The banks of the stream looked solid, covered with soft clay and fallen leaves. But as soon as she stepped forward, the ground gave way. Her front paws sank first. She tried to pull back, but her injured leg couldn't hold her weight. Within seconds, she was stuck, the cold mud pulling her down. It reached her belly, then her chest. She twisted and turned, trying to get free, but every movement made it worse. The mud was thick and heavy, like wet cement. Her breathing grew faster. Panic filled her chest. Her sharp ears, usually standing tall, now drooped low. Her eyes, a deep amber color that once helped her hunt in the dark, were wide with fear. She looked around for help, but the forest was quiet. She let out a few weak mews, not loud roars or growls, but soft, scared cries. They were the sounds of a creature who knew it was in trouble. The hours passed slowly. The sun moved through the sky, its light shining through the leaves above and creating moving shadows on the water. The forest was peaceful, but the lynx no longer saw any of it. Her strength was fading. Her golden fur was soaked and dark from the mud. Her nose barely lifted above the surface, and her sides rose and fell with shallow breaths. The world around her was still beautiful. Birds chirped, leaves rustled in the breeze, and the creek kept flowing. But to the lynx, it all felt far away. She was trapped, tired, and alone, with only the quiet sounds of nature and her own fading heartbeat. Sarah Chen had seen many things during her time in the wild, but nothing quite like what she found that day. At 34 years old, Sarah was a wildlife photographer with a past in veterinary care. Before choosing this quiet life in the woods, she had spent years in busy clinics, helping pets and injured animals. But after her painful divorce, she gave up city life completely. For the last 8 years, she had lived in a small wooden cabin by the creek, deep in the forest. She loved the peace, the animals, and the way each season changed the land. That October morning, the air was cool and crisp. Leaves crunched under her boots as she pulled her kayak down to the water. Her cameras and gear were packed safely in waterproof bags. She knew this creek like her own backyard. Every twist and turn, every rock, every animal track was familiar to her. But something felt off. She heard a sound that made her stop paddling, a soft, repeating cry. It didn't belong. It wasn't a bird or a frog or anything she normally heard on her daily trips. It sounded weak, scared, in pain. Her heart sped up. She recognized that sound from years ago. During her vet training, she'd heard it when animals were close to giving up. It was the sound of suffering. She carefully paddled around a group of overhanging willow branches. What she saw next made her heart drop and her stomach twist. A young lynx was trapped in the mud near the bank. Its golden spotted coat was caked in dark clay. Only parts of it were visible: the tips of its ears, the outline of its face, and one paw reaching out. It looked like a statue made of dirt. A statue that was still breathing. Sarah gasped. "Oh my God," she whispered. The lynx looked at her with wide eyes, eyes that didn't look wild or angry. Instead, they looked tired, sad, like they were begging for help. It was a look she would never forget. Without thinking twice, she paddled to the other side, and pulled her kayak onto land. She grabbed her emergency bag. Inside, she kept rope, just in case she ever needed it while hiking or rescuing gear. She had never thought she'd use it for an animal this size. "It's okay, beautiful," she said gently, keeping her voice low and steady. "I'm going to get you out." She stepped into the mud. It pulled at her boots, heavy and cold, but she pushed forward. The lynx didn't growl or snap. It was too tired, too cold, too hurt. Slowly, Sarah slipped the rope around its chest, whispering soft words the whole time. Then she looked around. A fallen log nearby gave her an idea. She tied one end of the rope to it and used her kayak as an anchor. With careful movements, she made a simple pulley system and began to pull. Inch by inch, the lynx's body rose from the muck. It took time, effort, and every bit of strength she had. But finally, the lynx lay on solid ground. Its legs shook, and its chest moved with deep, hard breaths. Sarah knelt beside it. The trap wound on its leg was swollen and red. Its ribs showed through its fur. It was soaked to the bone and shivering. Gently, she took off her jacket and laid it over the lynx's back. Then, she reached for her radio. She clicked the button and spoke clearly. "This is Sarah Chen on Whispering Creek. I have a lynx here, badly injured, cold, and not moving much. I need help. Please respond." As she waited for the reply, she rested her hand near the lynx's paw. It didn't move away. And for a moment, surrounded by the quiet forest, Sarah hoped she'd made it in time. Dr. Marcus Rivera, the head veterinarian at the Wildlife Center, arrived about 2 hours later, driving a small ATV down the forest trail. He jumped off quickly, carrying medical supplies in one hand. Sarah met him with the lynx still wrapped in her jacket, lying on a padded mat she had made from her photography gear. Together, they worked carefully and quietly. Sarah had turned 2 of her waterproof camera cases into a makeshift carrier. With added padding and rope for support, it was just big enough to hold the weak lynx without causing more harm. They gently lifted her in, making sure her injured leg wasn't bent or twisted. "You saved her life," Dr. Rivera said, as they secured the box onto his ATV. His voice was calm but full of emotion. "Another hour and she probably wouldn't have made it." Sarah nodded, watching the ATV pull away through the trees. She felt a strange mix in her chest. Fear for the lynx's future, relief that she had done something right, and a deep sense of meaning. It had been years since she felt this kind of connection, to nature, to purpose, to something beyond her own quiet world. Weeks passed. At the center, the lynx, now named Creek, after the place where she was rescued, began to heal. The infected wound slowly closed, her strength returned, and her wild spirit came back stronger than ever. She started climbing, running, and stalking toy prey like a true hunter. Sarah came every week, sometimes with her camera, sometimes just to sit and watch. She captured Creek's healing for her film, but more importantly, she felt drawn to visit. There was something special about this animal. Something that made her own life feel less small, less forgotten. Over time, Creek's golden fur grew clean and thick again. Her body filled out with muscle. The staff at the center noticed she had her full instincts back. She didn't trust humans, didn't beg for food, and reacted just like any healthy wild lynx would. One clear morning, Sarah returned to the center and found Dr. Rivera waiting by the tall fence of the outdoor enclosure. He had a clipboard in his hand, but his eyes were smiling. "She's ready," he said simply. "It's time to take her home. Full release, back to Cedar Ridge Forest. Would you like to come with us?" Sarah felt her heart skip. The answer was already yes. In that moment, as she watched Creek disappear into the trees, Sarah felt something powerful rise in her chest. It wasn't just pride or relief. It was a deep understanding of how all life is connected. How survival doesn't always come from strength alone, but from care, kindness, and being there at the right time. There are invisible threads that tie us all together, human, animal, wild, or tame. Creek moved with quiet strength, her paws making barely a sound on the soft forest floor. Her golden body melted into the undergrowth like a shadow returning home. In just a few seconds, she was gone, free once again. But not forgotten. Sarah stood there, eyes fixed on the place where the lynx had vanished. She didn't need to follow. She didn't need to see more. She knew that somewhere in those thick woods, a wild heart was beating stronger. Stronger because someone, just one person, had cared enough to act, to cross the line between human and animal, to reach out when it mattered most. And in doing so, she hadn't just helped Creek find her way back home. She had found a part of herself too. The bond between human and wild animal transcends words, existing in the quiet moments when one life touches another, and both are forever changed.